It's sodium Laureth Sulfate, that's the inky name, or sodium lauryl ether sulfate. It's an anionic surfactant, very widely used in cleaning. It's sold as a 30% solution in water, 60% in water and ethanol, or a 70% paste. Manufacturers include but are not limited to Stepan, Pilot, Kensing, Co Southwest, Science Co, and many others all over the world. It's manufactured very, very widely. So how is SLES made? It's a two-step process. First of all, take a lauryl alcohol and ethoxylate it with 1, 2, or 3 moles of EO, typically, and it doesn't have to be an even integer. It could be 1.5 moles or 2.2, something like that. Then take that resulting alcohol ethoxylate and sulfate it using SO3 to get the alcohol ether sulfate. And if you remember, if the SO3 is attached to the hydrophobe via the oxygen atom, one of the oxygens on the SO3, that means it's a sulfate. Downstream of the sulfation reactor, you're probably going to see some dioxane reduction. And indeed, in neutralization, in the neutralization step, you could be using a vacuum neutralizer, which removes some dioxane as part of the neutralization using the heat of neutralization. Then downstream of that, you may want to do some further stripping to get very low or even hyper low dioxane product. Where are they used? SLES is a cleaning surfactant. They're used everywhere. Household, personal care, industrial, institutional. In a typical formulation, you're going to see SLES with some co-surfactants that may be there to, let's say, improve foam stability, improve mildness, maybe improve grease cutting. SLES itself is a little bit milder than the straight SLS, sodium lauryl sulfate, where you're sulfating a non-ethoxylated fatty alcohol. So what about regulatory? Well, it's very well characterized. I guess I'm going to make 3 points. First of all, from the cosmetic ingredients review, I will read, it says here, sodium and ammonium lauryth sulfate have not evoked adverse responses in any toxicological testing. Sodium lauryth sulfate was demonstrated to be a dermal and ocular irritant, but not a sensitizer. The potential to produce irritation exists with these salts of sulfated ethoxylated alcohols, but in practice, they are not regularly seen to be irritating because of the formulations in which they are used. There's a whole report there, series of reports on the CIR, so check that out. Second thing, we've talked a lot about dioxane. Sodium lauryth sulfate has the potential to have dioxane contamination in there as a byproduct of the manufacturing process. We've done a whole video on that. And that's an ongoing issue which is being dealt with by manufacturing technology to mitigate formation and then remove downstream and destroy the removed dioxane. So check that out from Balestra. And the third thing is also something we've talked about, which is the sulfate-free niche. It's a marketing niche. Many brands are marketing sulfate-free products. Again, we've talked about that, so I refer you to prior videos. Why am I talking about SLES? Well, they're part of the basic toolkit for any cleaning formulation, so it's important you know the basics. I will finish with an honorary mention for other ether sulfates. So if you're building your ether sulfate on a petrochemical 1215, you're going to be calling it a 1215 algath sulfate, formerly in the inky system, the parath sulfate. Or if you're using something like a C13, that would be also normally petrochemical. That would be a tridecyth sulfate, or again in the algath nomenclature, C13 algath. So that completes SLES. I hope you have found it useful, and as always, thank you very much for listening.